Absolutely bang on. But Chirayu, here's the question to you then. You said that the G7 may not have wanted to wade in to the Indo-Canadian spat. The Americans had to make noises to sort of be taking their closest allies seriously. But in the face of this incontrovertible evidence, which is Pannun on camera. Now imagine for a moment, as Sherbi says, close your eyes and replace Air India with United, Delta, Alaska Air. What would the Americans be doing?
Uh, Bakha, a couple of points. First, when Jake Sullivan made the first initial statement that no country is exempt from extrajudicial killings, it came out at the highest statement of irony because it is coming from a U.S. national security advisor, and without going into the evidence side of it or whether Indian government was involved on it, the first gut reaction of many of the analysts like us on Twitter was, is this coming from you seriously? So like, if you have a threat to your homeland, you have all the tools at your disposal and you use it indiscriminately to kill people, sometimes at collateral damage of civilians, and you make sure that your homeland is secure. But if somebody else does this, you say you don't have the special exemption. What is this world where we are living in,
Yeah.
where you make the rules and we follow the rules? I mean, your lives matters and brown lives don't matter. That was the gut reaction of many of us, and perhaps some of the Western analysts were not able to digest this reaction coming from India. But there is another point. Uh, few comments during the last half an hour were made regarding how seriously we should take Pannu, and whether Pannu has the wherewithal. I think the fact that let's forget the United States for a second. Let's address the main issue here. Why this is all happening? It is happening because of Trudeau's vote bank politics. It is happening because of Trudeau's approval.
That explains Canada. What explains Biden's, the Biden administration not prioritizing this?
Look, Baka, there are two aspects to this. Let's first address the Canada aspect, and then I'll quickly come to the United States as well. The Canada aspect, the moment you tolerate, see, the fact that somebody is making a threat to someone else's life is in itself punishable. And if Trudeau is boasting all about rule of law, this is not something rule adopting, rule abiding countries accept. This is unacceptable by any civilizational standards. So he should be nabbed. The fact that you are tolerating it, it means that you give us political support, you scratch our back, you vote for us, and we will allow your vileful buffoonery, we will allow all the political contempt that you are directing at Hindus, at India. All those things are acceptable. That's one aspect of it. Now, for the United States, they are in a very difficult situations. If you place yourself in where United States is sitting, their cooperation with Canada is much thicker than theirs is with us. So they will initially have to lean on the Canadian side. There's a compulsion of geopolitics. There is compulsion of alliance. They can't simply wash off their hands and say that, oh, India is very important, or this seems like dubious or spurious, so we are not going to come and support you. There are compulsions of alliance, and that is where they have to stand together. United States was not critical with when Trudeau was doing all this, seemingly very harsh position that he took during the freedom convoy protest, and United States was not critical. Even the New York Times calling out that when the farm protests were going on in India, you said that protests are good, but you are not adopting the same standards. New York Times did it, but the United States could not take a position against its ally government. So I think those are compulsions within which United States has to play.
I get that on the Nijjar killing, Ambassador Suri, and Ambassador, yeah, and those are examples, by the way, on your screen of the extrajudicial assassinations by the Americans. But my question to you, Ambassador Suri, is this: okay, I get the Americans walking this tightrope on Nijjar. What is the tightrope to? Why is this man not behind bars? I am just asking that simple question.
Yeah, and I think he's given enough reason for action to be taken against him. And this particular statement that he's made now on Air India, with the brazenness with which the threats have been made, deserves action to be taken. I would just expect, as I said, that our government, our ambassador, others would be taking up very strongly with the Americans, showing them the videos, showing them everything else. But of course, we think that the Americans ought to be already knowing this. But maybe it's not as much on their front burner, and it is really our responsibility, of government of India's responsibility, to make sure that when you have any meeting with the Americans at the level of President, Prime Minister, NSA, Defense Secretary, you're going to have the 2+2 in a couple of days, right? In a time. Well, put it on top of your 5 points that you want to discuss, as important as China is. Make sure that make sure that it figures in the agenda of our bilateral discussions at places where it matters, so that we reiterate the seriousness with which we view this matter, and ask for tangible, verifiable steps to be taken by the government, and say that we are going to be watching it. There are plenty of opportunities that come for high-level engagements, which will again a few weeks later give us the chance to review, okay, what have you done in the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks on this? We're still waiting.
Absolutely. I agree totally. Sherby, quick last thought before I give Sanjay the closing word. Sherby, I had a question though before you react. I mean, isn't it ironic? We've spoken so much about duplicity. The world is fully absorbed in a debate around terrorism vis-a-vis the human rights of civilians, Israel, Gaza, of course. There is such a raging global debate around terrorism, and India and India's concerns yet again do not figure squarely at the heart of that conversation, and that really irritates me. Sherby?
It does me as well, Barkha. It does me as well. I think I think I've used the word duplicitous far too many times, but I'm going to go a step further and say it's just absolutely shameful that a threat of terrorist action, a threat to kill innocent civilians is taken very seriously in one part of the world, and suddenly it becomes irrelevant when it's in another part of the world. It's shameful. These are aspects of what we call universal law. They're unlikely to change. Forget the law, just the ethics of it, the morality of it is, has a very singular answer. There is no binary posture that's available to something. I would go back and agree with Ambassador Suri that at times these matters may not get the attention that they deserve for several reasons. I think the Canadians have less reasons to believe this, given all the shanty that they've created. But as far as the Americans are concerned, there could be a benefit of doubt position, and therefore our diplomatic push in terms of bringing this matter to the top of the agenda, expressing the seriousness of this, and also telling them how a group of these folks are trying to game the system. I've said this on multiple occasions, merely being a member of Simranjeet Singh Man's party gives you political asylum when Simranjeet Singh Man is sitting in our parliament on giving some concocted letterhead story of persecution, as in where is the persecution if the man can get elected to parliament? So I think there are a lot of important conversations to be had, but I share your rage, Barkha. I feel it very much as an Indian, and I do hope that nothing happens with this bogus threat or this cartoonish threat that Gurpatwant Singh Pannun has made. But more importantly, I think this will only rest when concrete, definitive action is taken against him, and not just merely, lip service that we do something.
Well said. And we do have a big, as Ambassador Suri pointed out, a big US-India bilateral coming up in 2 days from now. It's a perfect context to place this on the table. You also have an impending visit of the Prime Minister that was scheduled for San Francisco, but that is actually not taking place. But that said, there will be this big chance, as Ambassador Suri said, to raise this at the top of the agenda. Sanjay, last word to you.
If you watch Pannun's statement again, he doesn't talk about blowing up an aircraft from Canada alone. Air India flies to almost 40 flights a week, even in the US. This man is in the US. Number one, Twitter has not taken his account down or the video down. Number two, the US should realize he has actually threatened Air India flights all across. That's grounds for his arrest. And thirdly, I know our government is taking it up extremely strongly, and we need to be very careful. I pray that nothing comes in, and this guy should be should be jailed. He should be jailed for many, many years because he's caused diplomatic problems for our diplomats there. He's caused, enraged violence, and he's causing threats in India even today. Even today.